Keep an open mind, Doug. Keep an open mind. What is up, Finn fans? You got another doubleheader today. A lot of information and news is coming out these past couple days, so you've been getting multiple videos a day. Hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be doing this all year long, baby. Grier and Mike McDaniel met with the press today, so we are going to react to some of the things he said. And as you can tell by the title of this video, seems like they're a little frustrated with Tua Tagovailoa not being able to stay healthy. So we're going to talk about that, but real quick, there was some moves that were made today. We have signed the following 12 players to reserve/future contracts: wide receiver Tyreek Black, linebacker Williams Bradley King, safety Jordan Colbert, defensive tackle Neil Farrell, tackle Ryan Hayes, who was our 7th round pick, I think 2 years ago, offensive lineman Chasen Hines, the linebacker Daquan Jackson, cornerback Isaiah Johnson, cornerback Jason Maitre, tackle Byron Matos, linebacker Derek McLendon, and tight end Hayden Rucci. So a lot of these guys that they are bringing back have been here before. If that makes any sense. Let's jump into this. Will the Dolphins accommodate Tyreek Hill's desire to play elsewhere and trade him? Greer just now. Mike and I had a conversation with Tyreek, productive conversation. I will keep things between us. In a frustrating season, we had a very he was very emotional in a game where he had the chance coming back from 2-6. Greer said Tyreek did not backtrack, did not ask for a trade with me. So he didn't backtrack saying I'm out, but he also did not ask for a trade. McDaniel says players understood message he delivered after season. It starts with me. I'm accountable for all things. I'm not going to waver. Part of my motives are to make sure without any varying confusion that guys come to work in phase 1 fully knowing expectations. Mike McDaniel said there will be zero tolerance for things that can be cleaned up in 2025. It was a postseason meeting theme. Players have to understand and embrace expectations. I kind of want to tell you, because I got tidbits of information and I was reading a lot of what they said in the presser, and I have a roundabout idea of what they were thinking and their thought process. And you can see where they're at. So I'll talk about that at the end of the video. McDaniel said there were certain players who were late this year who had been fined multiple times and it won't be tolerated. He said fines have not been enough. Tardiness was a theme in his meetings yesterday. McDaniel said he will deal with this. That's a problem, Mike. That is a problem. If they feel like they can be tardy and you're going to fine them and they're like, whatever, fine me, I don't give a crap. Now all of a sudden you're going to come back and be like, listen here, Mr. Man. They're going to be like, be quiet. You've kind of lost that authoritative disciplinary aspect you're trying to implement now, because for 3 years you were their best friend. I don't know how you go back from that. One thing I've learned is finding guys didn't particularly move the needle in the way we need to. I'll adjust as I should as a head coach. McDaniel met with Tyreek and told him leaving a game is unacceptable and won't be tolerated. I don't think there's anything to fix. He embraced accountability, essentially, is what he said. If your actions continually lead to finable offenses, you are telling me without words that you don't want to be here. So are they going to go in an aspect of, you keep doing these things, we're gone, we'll trade you, we'll cut you, all this stuff? Because that's something that should have been implemented a while ago. That's something that should have been known. Like, again, I'll talk about it at the end, but it seems like it's too little too late. But we'll see. Chris Grier said Stephen Ross was frustrated. Everything will be evaluated from medical to strength to video. Those expectations have been honest from day one. He wants to win more than anyone, and we want to win for him. He deserves a winner. Status quo, baby. Status quo. Players have to be held accountable. Coaches aren't around them 24/7. We have a lot of good people in the locker room, guys who love football, but the intention but the intentionality of things, they didn't realize the residuals. That's where, if you heard in earlier today's video, Bradley Chubb talking about things, and Sealer and all these guys kind of coming out and being like, we need to be better as leaders in the locker room. Grier said the Dolphins were runners-up on a number of top-flight backup quarterbacks last season, and it's a position they do not take lightly. Again, I have a whole spiel to say at the end of this. Grier on backup quarterback. Skyler Thompson almost won a playoff game. We are excited about him and his growth. Please, for the love of God, don't have Skyler Thompson on the team. That said, we were in a number of top flight quarterback positions. We couldn't get to the price. It's a position we don't take lightly. It is a position you take lightly if you can't get to the price. Figure it out. I don't give a crap that Skyler Thompson almost won a playoff game, because in actuality, if you go back to that playoff game against Buffalo, Skyler Thompson is the reason we lost that game, because he threw 2 interceptions that gave the Bills points. He doesn't throw those 2 interceptions, and he's more careful with the football. We win that game. Grier on Tua, he needs to be available. He needs to protect himself. Not being available for taking chances and risk is unacceptable to us. That is where things start to get a little interesting. That quote right there, and that's where the title of the video is. He needs to be available. He needs to protect himself. Not being available for taking chances and risks is unacceptable to us. It's easy and appropriate to say our physicality was shortchanged in short yardage situations. This is what Mike McDaniel said. That is a part of our football that can and will improve. I have a whole video where I'm going to talk about his offense and what happened and why it failed so much this season, because a lot of people have pointed things out and it makes a ton of sense. So that is a video that you'll get, if not this week, definitely next week. I got a lot planned for you guys this week. Always a fine line. There's 100% injury rate in football. There's always a risk of signing players, but you never want to miss an opportunity to sign a player. Essentially what he's saying there is he's not going to steer away from signing players who have an injury history, because there's always a risk and you don't want to miss on an opportunity to sign a player. There is a difference between having an injury history and a player that was injured. Prime example, Drew Brees, right? Drew Brees had a big shoulder injury, but prior to that, he didn't really have much of a history of being injured. So when he went to New Orleans, smart move, because again, you have one injury, it's a big one to his shoulder, but they can, can he come back from it? Then you go out and get Teron Armstead. Not knocking Teron, I love Teron, but he had a history of being injured. Same thing with Isaiah Wynn, has a history of being injured, and all of a sudden they start getting injured and you're like, hey, whoa, what's going on? That doesn't make any sense. Austin Jackson was a huge loss for us. Once he went down, it was a slow bleed out, Grier said. I agree a little bit there. At first, Austin Jackson was, the draft pick. We were all like, oh, what a reach. But then at the end of it, he's actually a very solid right tackle and definitely helps us in some situations. So it's not just that. And we'll get to the bigger picture of that. Is Grier more concerned with the offensive line? I'm surprised it took that long to ask. Are you? When I said that he wasn't concerned, he said he was just supporting the O-line publicly because that's the hardest working group in the building. He said, when we ran it back with a lot of guys while adding Brewer because they ran well in 2023. He said Paul and Andrew Meyer, a good piece. Austin was a huge loss. When he went down, it was a slow bleed. Keon Smith was a huge loss. We had teams trying to trade for him. Win was a setback. We thought we would be back much quicker. So essentially what he's saying is, by telling us you're more worried about the offensive line than we are, publicly he was supporting his guys. And he said, hey, our offensive line was good in 2023. It was okay. It wasn't good. Because if you go back, Tua still had no time to throw. When the end of the season came, we were falling apart. You had no depth. Don't get me wrong, with the starters in there, in Teron Armstead, Isaiah Wynn, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, and Austin Jackson, with those 5 in there, our offensive line was good. But they started falling one by one by one, and you let Robert Hunt go. So by letting Robert Hunt go and plugging in Liam Eichenberg, that's a big mistake. And we all saw it. You should have saw it from his work in training camp. Made no moves. Now he brings up Keon Smith, who, he's bringing up names that aren't moving the needle. And that is where the problem is. He said, we're going to invest in the offensive line now. We are older there now. Obviously, this is the time to start investing in some offensive linemen. So now he's going to do it. Again, I will give you my whole spiel about how I feel about the press conference at the end. Mike McDaniel said all defenders were deep and wide with 2 deep safeties all season. You have to make people pay for what they're taking away. Yes, 100%. We can't sit here and act like the reason why our offense changed so much is because, of course, they're playing 2 deep safeties, maybe even at some points 3 deep safeties, or, like I showed you got the safety coming down, you got the 2 corners playing deep. There's all different iterations of this defense that we saw because they didn't want the number one passing offense to burn them deep. And Mike McDaniel made no adjustments. That's a problem. Greer and Javon Holland, we had a conversation thought out this summer with his agent. He's been a good player here. We put it on hold when the season started. We'll talk and see what happens there. Javon Holland, I give him a contract that I think is fair. I'm not paying him top 10 safety money because he didn't play like a top 10 safety. I give him incentive base with an option to get more money. And then if he doesn't like it, I'll let him test the market. He can always come back if he likes what he's seeing. Chris Grier on the cold weather. We are always looking at how we can beat Buffalo, the Jets, and the Patriots. In some of these games, we found a way to beat ourselves. We need to change that narrative and find a way to win. He's not wrong there because in 2022, we lost to Buffalo, in the cold, in the snow by a field goal. We actually played that game very well. It's a lot of self-inflicted wounds, like the Packers game, no tackling. There's a lot of stuff there. So they got to figure that out. Self-inflicted wounds, and we seem to do that at the wrong time, 100%. Chris Grier and Anthony, we have a couple of interviews requested to have been granted. Tremendous human being, commended respect. Players enjoy playing for him. So we'll see if he comes back. If he doesn't come back, I talked about in earlier today's video. Check it out. 2 guys that I'd like to brought in, one of them being Robert Saleh. Mike McDaniel on offensive play calling says he'll always consider it. He believes the team is best served with Mike calling the plays. So he thinks that the team is best served with him calling the plays. He says the second that changes, he will delegate the role. My man, it's changed. It's been changed. Holy crap, man. Sometimes you're going to have to go through these to take the next step, Chris Grier said, on going 8-9. He said the fact that Sealer and Achane didn't make the Pro Bowl, I think, is BS. But he didn't say BS. He said the whole thing, which I was like, whoa, potty mouth from Chris Grier. Grier said no concern about Tua's hip, asked why 6-year rebuild hasn't resulted in playoff success. Grier said a few things, including the quarterback when he misses 6.5 games. To me, that's the difference there. Again, that is why I titled the video the way I did, because this is the second time he brought up the fact of Tua being injured. Throw the ball away. You don't have to run around and be Superman. Live for the next play, Grier on Tua. What you love about him is his competitiveness and his fight. Again, a little double down there. Chris Grier said veteran defensive tackle Calais Campbell indicated to the Dolphins that if he does decide to return next season, Miami will be in strong consideration as he enjoyed his time here. I hope and pray to God he comes back. I asked Chris Grier why 5 years later, after the initial reset, the playoff. Yeah, I already read that one to you guys. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. I think that's it. This is from Barry Jackson. Found this fascinating. While Greer did not dodge accountability when asked why this 6-year project has resulted in a playoff win, the first tangible thing he mentioned was Tua's missing 6.5 games after saying Tua's not protecting himself is unacceptable. So this whole thing is gonna be very interesting. But from what I got from this whole presser is, I got two major things. One, Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier are now at the point where they are not on a hot seat; they are on an inferno, and they are now GMing and coaching for their jobs. And do I think this is the point where they will turn it up and actually do the right things? I think so, to a certain extent. I think they will probably focus on the offensive line a little bit more. I do think they will do something about the quarterback position. That is a whole video in itself that I plan on doing this offseason. But I think that they're in a situation where you gotta win. You need to win a playoff game in 2025 or you're fired. Both of them. And I feel like that's probably what Stephen Ross said to them and why they came back. Is he's like, look, I understand Tua got hurt. I understand the circumstances happen, but this is it. This is it. Which kind of sucks, because I talked about this to someone on Twitter where they said, he gave him an extra year, try to get things settled, yada, yada. But every year, Ross gives somebody, either a player, like a quarterback, or a head coach or whatever, an extra year, we miss out on talent. Like, we kept giving Tannehill extra years. We missed out on Josh Allen. We missed out on Patrick Mahomes. We missed out on all these guys because we had a quarterback. We had Ryan Tannehill. We just got to build around. I got to build around him. It's the same thing with giving Philman an extra year and missing out on potential good head coaching candidates. So I think from what I got from this presser is this is what I'm getting, and I'll tell you how I feel about it. They're going to change their ways, and they're going to be more focused and hyper-focused on the things that need to be done to win in December and January. But for me, I need to see it before I believe it. I am very jaded now. Now, like I said, I appreciate them saying these things, and I do think they are going to try their best to change it. But there's only so many times you could tell me what I'm drinking is chocolate milk, and every time I drink it, it is a crap sundae. You know what I'm saying? So when I see it, I'll believe it. But from what I'm getting, that's where they're at, where their back is up against the wall and they're trying to fight their way out of it. And by fighting their way out of it, they're telling us what we want to hear, and they're probably going to make moves to do what we've been telling them to do for the past 3 years. Tua Tagovailoa, title of the video. I got a big... the biggest thing I got from them is they are tired of him being injured all the time. And I do think they're going to address the quarterback situation. Again, that is a video I'll probably make next week. But they will address the quarterback situation, preferably the backup. I think they will bring in somebody that is a potential starter. Like how I wanted them 2 years ago to bring in Baker Mayfield, to bring in Gardner Minshew, to bring in these guys. I think they will bring in these guys, and I don't think they'll bring them in with the expectation of, you're the backup to Tua. I think they're going to bring them in with the expectation of, you're going to compete with Tua. I think it's a completely different scenario, and I think if they could go back a year, I think they wouldn't have given him a contract extension last year. I feel like they are sitting here kind of regretting it, from what I'm getting from them, because they said it multiple times of him not staying healthy, missing 6.5 games, because you can't win like that. You can't win in the NFL if you're starting quarterback. When Tua's healthy, we win. And it's a fact. Yes, we lose some games. You're not going to go 17-0. But when he's healthy, we have a winning record. Look at last year. But he's not healthy. And you can't win in the NFL if you can't depend on your quarterback. And I think they're starting to see that. And I think this is the year we are going to see them make some moves towards it. Because they can move on from him next year, 2026. They can move on from him. So I think this is the year that they start to get themselves in a situation to prepare for that potentially. But the biggest thing I got is they're going to focus on the offensive line. Mike McDaniel's probably going to be a little bit more hard-nosed, but like I said, is it too little too late? And they're sick of Tua getting injured. Because from what I heard, when he got injured week 2, they were very upset that they just paid him this big contract and he went and put himself in that situation. That's what I heard back in week 3 after it happened. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see. Like I said, I'd rather be surprised than let down. You need to prove it to me type of situation. So we'll see how this all pans out. I got a ton of content and videos planned for you guys. So a lot to talk about this offseason. A lot of moves need to be made. But comment below. Let me know, what did you pick up from this presser? And I'll see you guys tomorrow. But like usual, stay classy. Fins up.